Hello, my name is April Gimlin, and today I am going to discuss some common issues in higher education budgeting and some avenues budget managers can use to address these issues and hopefully overcome them. I believe that authors Dar and Lee best summed up the essence of higher education budgeting with the following quote. Higher education involves the provision of various combinations of collective and particularized benefits, serves a diverse set of constituencies, and uses both public and private sources of financial support. There are many problems within higher education budgeting, but also a multitude of solutions available. Recessions and budget cuts are often the catalysts of these problems. Another cause of these issues, especially within the public higher education system, is the fact that the demand for post-secondary education is high, but funding for these institutions is often a low item on a state's funding list, often falling behind in importance to Medicare and other state initiatives. In order to understand the problems and pitfalls of higher education budgeting, it is important for one to know where an institution's funds come from and how they are spent. Common sources of income for colleges and universities are tuition, state and local appropriations, private gifts, investment returns, endowment income, state and local grants and contracts, federal appropriations, grants and contracts, auxiliary revenues such as residence halls, food services, health services, intercollegiate athletics, hospitals, independent operations, and other various sources of revenue. Common costs and expenditures for institutions include instruction, research, public service, student services, academic support, institutional support, scholarships and fellowships, plant operation and maintenance, and auxiliary expenses such as hospitals and clinics. This list is not exhaustive, and various institutions will have varying income sources and costs. The amount of these incomes and costs will vary across schools as well. In their text, Budgets and Financial Management in Higher Education, Barr and McClellan provided a list of common issues budget managers face within their jobs. First, a budget manager must understand the organization of the institution and its internal procedures. Regardless of whether the manager is over an entire institution or just a department or college, they should know the ins and outs of how things work on the large scale and the small scale. The extent of their knowledge should be based on whether the institution utilizes a centralized or decentralized budget system. A successful budget manager should observe relationships between staff and know who does what in order to know who to go to with an issue. In addition to understanding how the institution operates, a budget manager should make it a point to learn about the budgets of years past. This way, the manager will know the unique ways in which the institution controls its budget. The manager will also learn where the institution's funds come from and which source provides the most revenue, as well as both the small and large costs associated with running the school effectively. The manager should not assume that past budgeting practices were effective or perfect, but should identify recurring financial issues. Next, Barr and McClellan posited that a budget manager should assess the capabilities of others in regards to budget management. This helps to identify what areas need the most assistance and can also allow one to identify those who are eager to help with the budget and are accepting of changes to what they have known as the normal budgeting processes in past years. A diligent budget manager will also assess themselves and determine what they are capable of and accomplishing in their position. Identifying problems and developing solutions can help a budget manager address issues before they become even larger. It is also important to form relationships with colleagues who can help budget managers combat issues when they arise. An effective way to do this is to ask those who are involved in the budgeting process to get together and review the budget on a regular basis. Lastly, a budget manager should be able to manage change with grace. Change is often met with hostility and resistance from those who have been used to the same yearly budget routine. In order to manage change effectively, the budget manager should identify what does and does not work well within the process, be respectful, and display the integrity to others even when there are disagreements, and determine whether or not the benefits of the change outweigh the losses prior to implementation. Barr and McClellan also created a list of common pitfalls of budget managers. Making informal agreements is dangerous in any sort of environment involving funds, especially mandated funds. Handshake deals should not occur. Having agreements in writing is better for all parties involved. This could be an email or a short memorandum in place of a formal contract. This helps ensure all are understanding of the agreement and that it withstands leadership changes. Overestimating revenue is the most common mistake made by budget managers. It is important to have accurate estimates to ensure accurate budgeting. It is typically better to be under budget than over budget. Sometimes budget managers, as most of us do, will throw problems to the side to deal with later. Instead of dreading facing the problem, the budget manager should face it head on before it becomes catastrophic. Having someone to assist in problem solving is ideal. In the same way that many of us avoid facing problems, we also sometimes do not like to show others that we do not know the answer to everything. It is important to ask questions so that one can learn the proper answer and grow in their career as a budget manager. Budget managers should make it a point to look for costs that may not be blatantly visible, such as rent, capital costs, equipment, and the creation of new positions so they can incorporate them in the budget and be prepared. Budget managers should remain cognizant of grant end dates so that they are not left with an unexpected hole in the budget. They should also review previous fiscal years and observe patterns in regards to revenue and costs. Sometimes we as humans forget to consider the weight of our actions on others. As a budget manager, it is important to identify all who will be affected by changes and to always follow institutional rules and regulations. Software changes that affect multiple units within the institution should be discussed with others. Any strange or unusual costs should serve a purpose and should be able to be rationalized. Lastly, assuming the good times will continue is a major pitfall with budget managers. Enrollment may drop, state funding may be reduced, or an endowment may end. Recessions like the one that started in 2008 greatly affect higher education. I hate to say plan for the worst, but the budget should at least be flexible. Budget managers can avoid the aforementioned pitfalls and issues by examining the institution's revenue, chronic issues in the budget, look beyond the fiscal year, and plan beyond the unit. The manager should be able to determine whether revenue is accurate, underestimated, or overestimated. They should also where the bulk of the revenue comes from in order to plan for any shortages that may occur. Chronic issues should be examined by not only the budget manager, but by other staff members at the institution or in the unit. Reserve funds should be built into the budget to address any chronic issues or emergencies. Planning beyond the fiscal year helps the budget manager account for time-limited grants and contracts and also allows for the examination of multi-year consequences, as mentioned earlier. Hidden costs should also be identified and addressed. Planning beyond the unit will help the budget manager avoid harming other units or departments with their decisions. Those who will be affected by budgeting changes should be brought into the discussion. Higher education budgeting is similar to budgeting in a for-profit business, but there are also distinct differences. More students enrolled is a great thing because it brings in more tuition and fees, right? Well, it also brings about more costs, such as the need for more instructors, more classes, more buildings, and more services. Also, some students pay lower tuition or no tuition at all. This creates issues for higher education budget managers. They want to keep curricular costs low while also keeping enrollment and retention numbers high. In order to effectively utilize institutional resources, costs must be cut when and where they can. This may mean replacing full-time faculty with part-time faculty to reduce the amount of budget dedicated to salaries and benefits. Outsourcing services like tech support can also help reduce institutional costs. These options ultimately would lead to smaller programs, smaller institutions, and reduced quality of teaching and learning. However, costs are cut and resources are available to be used in other areas. There are a multitude of ways to utilize higher education finances, and it is up to the budget manager to determine what is the most appropriate for their institution. While each institution's budget is different, there are common trends that have emerged in recent years. Many institutions have a high reliance on public subsidies, such as local, municipal, or county taxes. This is especially true at the community college level. Another trend in budgeting is to increase tuition. According to Breslowski, tuition rose 439% from 1982 to 2005. An important note to mention in regards to tuition is that it sometimes rises 2.5 to 3.5% above inflation rates, making citizens wonder if the education is worth the cost. In times such as the 2008 recession and the years following, there exists an extreme uncertainty of enrollment, recruitment, and retention. Budget managers need to be wary of societal and cultural changes in their communities. Endowments are blessings to an institution's budget, but they are often donated to certain programs or departments. The amounts given may fluctuate as well. However, many institutions do rely heavily on endowments. Economic and social indicators kind of go hand in hand. Higher education enrollment and therefore higher education budgets are highly reliant on the state of the economy and on the values of the areas that institutions are located in. Many fled to universities in the most recent recession to get a degree to qualify for more jobs, while others could not afford to continue going to school. Programs offered at universities and colleges should reflect the common job sectors in the surrounding community. Higher education governance has a huge influence on the budget. The president or chancellor, boards of trustees, and other members of governing bodies of institutions sometimes have a big say in what sort of funds go to what sort of programs. The athletics department may receive more funding than any other department in the school if athletics brings a lot of money into the school and the governing body is aware of that. Some states also have statewide governing systems, such as the UNC system, which has an effect on the budget as well. Another common trend not listed here is political influence on state funding of higher education. Democratic states have been found to contribute more funds to state institutions than those governed by Republicans. Budget cuts are inevitable. However, many do not realize the enormous impact these cuts make. Capaldi summed up the said impact well in the following quote: "Because administrators do not talk publicly about the negative effects of budget cuts, many people outside the university do not realize how much damage these cuts are causing. While it is important for legislators and governors and the public at large to understand these negative effects, advertising the effects hurts our ability to recruit faculty members and students and depresses morale. We know, however, that when we increase class size, rely more heavily on contingent faculty, and cut staff, we are indeed interfering with the quality of education we provide to students." When having to deal with cuts or having to make them yourself as a budget manager, there are ways to ease the sting. The first way is to communicate effectively with staff members and faculty members. You should also be clear regarding the missions and values of the institution and how budget cuts reflect them. You should provide strategies in regards to where you are going to cut finances in the budget, and of course, you should always aim for a positive outcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation.